Welcome to Mother's Revenge, where heartfelt stories touch your soul and may even bring you to tears. On my daughter's 10th birthday, she opened a gift for my mother-in-law, and seconds later she screamed, "Mom, my eyes, I cannot see anything. I still hear that scream in my head." My wife rushed her to the hospital while I stood frozen holding the shiny box that smelled faintly of almonds. The same scent we were warned could kill her. I thought nothing could break a family faster than hate. But I was wrong. Sometimes it is love twisted by control that destroys you from the inside. And when my wife came back that night, she did not come alone. She brought the police. My name is Michael Harper, and this is the story of how one birthday gift tore my family apart. And now, let me tell you everything. If my story moves you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means more than you think. It reminds people like me that we are not alone in the fight to protect the ones we love. It was supposed to be perfect, the kind of afternoon you record and keep forever. String lights glowed over our backyard in Boulder. Pastel balloons swayed in the soft wind, and 10 kids ran barefoot through the grass. Sarah, my wife, moved like calm gravity between tables, checking the food, keeping everything in order. I was behind the camera trying to capture Emily's laughter. She had just turned 10, a little artist who still believed the world was kind. For her, today was about cake and color. For me, it was about keeping her safe. Emily's nut allergy was not mild. It was life-threatening. We had learned to live by rules. No nuts, no oils, no experiments. I had printed nut-free signs for the snack table, even checked every brand of frosting twice. I told myself we were ready. When the gate creaked open, Margaret and James arrived late as usual. Margaret's perfume reached us first, a heady mix of lavender and self-righteousness. Her husband followed quietly, holding the gift. They had brought a gold-wrapped box with a white ribbon, a handwritten tag that read, "Nature is always best for children." I felt something tighten in my stomach. Sarah noticed too, but said nothing. Emily's face lit up when she saw her grandparents. She ran forward and hugged them, her voice bright. I wanted to stop her, but James caught my eye and gave a soft nod, the kind that says James knew Margaret was experimenting with Emily, but believed it would be harmless, so he stayed quiet to avoid making a scene. When things escalated, he realized his mistake and cooperated with the police. Do not ruin the moment. Margaret set the box on the table and clapped her hands. "Open it now, sweetheart. Grandma made this herself." I knew better than to argue in front of everyone. I smiled thin and forced as Emily tore into the wrapping. Inside lay a handcrafted natural beauty, set small jars of soap, a tiny bottle of floral oil, a cream labeled eye balm. Margaret's pride was visible in every syllable. "All organic, no chemicals," she said. My pulse jumped. Sarah glanced at me. I thought about the pediatrician's words, the chart taped to our fridge. No nut extracts, no almond oil, no exceptions. I hesitated just half a second, long enough to let Emily's small fingers dip into the cream. "Try it, honey," Margaret coaxed. She believed that by exposing Emily to allergens naturally, the girl would become stronger despite the doctor's warnings. Emily smiled, dabbed a bit beneath each eye, and before I could breathe, she screamed a raw animal sound that split the air. "Mom, my eyes, I cannot see anything." Everything stopped. Kids froze. Parents dropped their cups. Sarah sprinted toward her, snatching Emily into her arms. The jar rolled across the grass, leaving a greasy streak on the ground. The smell hit me then, faint, sweet, unmistakable almonds. My hands trembled as I grabbed the emergency kit, but Sarah was already yelling for the EpiPen and shouting into her phone for help. I called 911, stumbling over our address. James backed away, pale. Margaret stood there muttering, "It is just a reaction. She will be fine," as if words could undo what she had done. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the trees. I followed the paramedics to the gate, my throat dry as dust. The party emptied around me like a drained dream balloon's collapsing cake untouched. When the ambulance pulled away, I stood alone by the glittering box, that sickly almond scent still clinging to the air. In that silence, guilt settled heavy in my chest. I had paused for one breath, and it had cost my daughter her sight. Whether this was a mistake or something darker, I did not yet know, but I swore I would never hesitate again. Hospitals have a kind of silence that hums. The antiseptic smell burned my nose as I signed form after form, hands shaking so badly the pen left scratches across the paper. Sarah was inside with Emily, helping the doctors flush her eyes. From the waiting area, I could still hear faint cries muffled by the door. On her sleeve, I had seen a shimmer of the cream oily under the fluorescent lights. The scent almond sharp and sweet would not leave me. The attending physician came out, his voice steady but firm. The cream had caused a chemical burn to Emily's corneas. The reaction was serious but treatable. She might recover her sight in time if no further complications arose. If she had gotten here 10 minutes later, he said, the damage could have been permanent. His words landed like a sentence. Sarah gripped my arm so hard it hurt. I nodded, unable to speak. While Sarah stayed with Emily, I sat alone by the vending machines, flipping open my notebook. I wrote everything down: the time Emily applied the cream, the scream, the call, the smell, the brand name. I needed order proof, a map through the chaos. Then came the memories I had tried to bury. Margaret at our old apartment, handing Emily a protein smoothie that turned out to contain almond milk. Margaret saying, "You are too scared of life, Michael. A little exposure builds strength." Sarah had argued with her countless times, showed her the doctor's reports, the allergy tests, the emergency protocol. Margaret always rolled her eyes, claiming she had raised 2 kids without modern nonsense. She saw caution as weakness, control as virtue. Now those old fights echoed through the sterile hall. I pressed my palms to my face and saw flashes of my own childhood. My mother shouting the same words Margaret had just used. Pain makes you stronger. I had believed it once. I knew what it did to a child. And now I was watching history repeat itself through my daughter's screams. When Sarah came out, her scrubs were streaked with tears. "They are keeping her for observation," she said. "The burns are not deep. She is stable." Relief hit me like water after fire, but it was brief. I asked, "What did the doctor say caused it exactly?" Sarah whispered, "Almond oil. It is right there on the label." Back home, while Sarah stayed overnight at the hospital, I forced myself to open the discarded gift bag Margaret had brought. Inside, beneath the shredded gold paper, I found a folded note stained with oil. Add 2 drops. Test reaction. Abnormal response. Immunity. My vision tunneled. I snapped a photo and sent it to Sarah with trembling hands. My pulse pounded in my ears. I thought about the line between love and cruelty, how thin it really was. Margaret believed she was helping just as my mother once believed breaking me would make me whole. Maybe that is the most dangerous kind of harm. The kind that comes from someone who insists it is for your own good. Sitting in the half-dark living room, I heard the distant storm moving in over Boulder. My phone buzzed with Sarah's message. "She is sleeping now. We will know more in the morning." I typed back, "I found something. We need to talk to the police." Then I set the note on the table, the smell of almonds curling up from the paper. Inside the box, I found a handwritten note. Add 2 drops. Test reaction. Abnormal response. Immunity. The faint smell of almonds still clung to the paper, a warning I could not ignore. That night, I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's hands reaching out into nothing, her voice cracking with fear. Somewhere deep inside, a thought I had never dared entertain surfaced with icy clarity. Maybe this was not an accident, and if it was not, then love as Margaret defined it had just crossed into something criminal. I looked out the window toward the dark horizon and whispered to no one, "I will not let her hurt my daughter again. Not ever." By the time the doctor said Emily was stable enough to sleep through the night, exhaustion had settled into my bones like concrete. Sarah stayed at the hospital curled up in the chair beside our daughter's bed. I drove home alone through streets blurred with rain headlights stretching like ghosts across the wet asphalt. The house was still lit when I pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Margaret sitting in the living room, upright, serene, sipping tea as if the day had not happened. James stood at the kitchen sink, shoulders bent, head lowered. The moment I stepped in, Margaret looked up, her voice calm and clipped. "How is my granddaughter?" The way she said made my stomach twist. "Alive," I said, shutting the door behind me. "Barely." She raised an eyebrow. "Do not be dramatic." Kids recover fast. I stared at the mug in her hands. Steam rose and lazy curls the same way her confidence always did. Slow, deliberate, impossible to stop. I asked what she had put in the cream. "Natural oils," she answered, tone sharp as a needle. "Nature is meant to heal, Michael. You people live in fear." I laid the photo of her handwritten note on the table. The words, "Add 2 drops, test reaction," glistening in the lamplight. "What is this?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back at me. "You would not understand. You are part of a generation that panics over everything." James stepped forward, voice trembling. "Margaret, enough." She ignored him. "You and Sarah are raising that child to be fragile. The world is not sterile, Michael." A little adversity never killed anyone. I clenched my fists until the nails bit my palms. "You nearly blinded her." Margaret smirked. "You are too soft to raise a strong girl." The words hit me like something physical. I wanted to scream, to throw the mug she held, to make her see the damage she had done, but I remembered Emily's voice, trembling and blind, and knew shouting would not change anything. My phone buzzed. Sarah's message flashed across the screen. "Michael, it is time." I called Detective Johnson. I looked at Margaret, who sat there smug and certain, then at James, whose eyes were full of defeat. "They are on their way," I said quietly. She did not react, just took another sip of tea. "You called the police on family?" she asked, not angry, almost amused. "Yes," I said, "on someone who nearly killed my child." I moved through the kitchen methodically. I placed the jar of cream in a zip bag, sealed it, labeled the time, filmed the table, the scattered wrapping paper, even the crumbs on the counter. The house that had been filled with laughter hours ago now felt like a crime scene. James came to my side, his hand trembling on my shoulder. "I will cooperate," he said, voice raw. I told her to stop. She would not listen. I nodded, my throat tight. When Detective Johnson arrived, the red-blue pulse of his cruiser washed through the curtains. He was calm, professional, his notebook open, his questions steady. I explained everything: the allergy, the warning signs, the hospital diagnosis, the note. I gave him the photos I had taken. He bagged the evidence carefully, then looked at me. "Mr. Harper, I am going to be honest with you. This is not the first complaint involving your mother-in-law. There were similar reports in Greenville 3 years ago. Children harmed by homemade oils. None of them pressed charges. Maybe now someone finally will." The words hollowed me out. "You are saying this is not new?" He shook his head. "Not new at all." James turned pale. "She told me it was harmless experiments," he whispered. "I did not know she had done this before." Margaret did not look at him. She just stared at the window as if watching something none of us could see. After Johnson left, silence fell hard. I gathered a few clothes for Sarah and Emily, folded them neatly into a duffel. The birthday lights outside still swayed in the wind, their bulbs dimming one by one. I locked the door behind me and whispered to the empty house, "If justice has to walk through my front door, then let it choose my daughter." Rain came again that night, soft and cold, dripping from the eaves like a ticking clock. I had not slept when the sound came 3 deliberate knocks on the front door. Through the glass, blue and red lights flickered against the wet street. Margaret sat where I had left her, still in that purple dress from the party, a porcelain figure with a cup of cold tea. James was beside her head, bowed eyes hollow. I opened the door. Detective Johnson stood under the porch light water glistening on his jacket. "Mr. Harper," he said, "we have a warrant to collect additional evidence and bring Mrs. Hartwell in for questioning." Margaret did not flinch. "Questioning?" she repeated as if tasting the word. "For what, loving my family too much?" Johnson ignored her tone. "Ma'am, please stand." She laughed softly. "You people are unbelievable. I raised Sarah with these hands, and now she sends the police to arrest her own mother." Sarah appeared in the doorway behind him, soaked to the skin, her hair plastered to her face. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "You almost killed my daughter." Something shifted in the air. Margaret's eyes darted between us, searching for someone to take her side. I stayed silent. Anything I said would only be another wound. James whispered, "Margaret, you need a lawyer." She turned to him, voice dripping with disdain. "I need my family to stop betraying me." Johnson motioned for his partner to collect the items I had prepared. They photographed the kitchen, the table, the notes. The click of the camera echoed through the house like distant thunder. Margaret stood straight in her dress and faced me. "You think this will make you a hero? You think locking me up fixes what is wrong with this world?" I said nothing. James's hands shook as he reached for her. "Please, Margaret," he whispered. She pulled away. "You will see. She will thank me one day." They escorted her out in silence. Rain splashed across the steps as she walked to the cruiser. I watched her climb inside. Her reflection fractured in the wet glass. For a moment I almost pied her. The certainty that had ruled her entire life was finally turning on her. But then I saw Emily's frightened face in my mind, and the pity vanished. Johnson lingered after the car pulled away. His voice dropped low. "Michael, there is something you should know. We found 2 prior incident reports in Greenville chemical burns from similar mixtures. Both trace back to a wellness group your mother-in-law belonged to. She is not new to this." The words cut through the rain like steel. James closed his eyes, his breath shuddering. "I thought she was just obsessed with healing," he said quietly. "I did not know she had been warned before." Johnson nodded, then left his car, disappearing into the storm. Inside the house felt emptier than it had ever been. I gathered the scattered papers on the coffee table and wiped away a drop of rain that had landed on the photo of Emily smiling at her party. As I bent to pick up a fallen cushion, something white caught my eye under the chair where Margaret had been sitting. A sealed envelope written in looping purple ink for Sarah when she is ready to forgive. I stared at it, unsure whether to open it or burn it. My gut told me whatever was inside would only deepen the wound. I slid it into the drawer by the sink, shut it gently, and stood there for a long time. The clock ticked. The rain eased. James moved to the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. "Michael, I do not know how to fix this." I poured a glass of water, took a sip that tasted of metal and regret. "Maybe we do not fix it," I said. "Maybe we just stop pretending it is not broken." He nodded once and left for the guest room. When the lights went out, I sat alone in the kitchen, the house humming with the quiet of things that cannot be undone. I thought about the word family and how easily it can turn from comfort to cage. I thought about my mother, about Margaret, about how both believed love meant control. And for the first time in my life, I felt afraid not of losing them, but but of how much of them still lived in me. The clock struck 2. I whispered into the dark, "We cannot go back. Not now. Not ever." A week after the arrest, the house still smelled faintly of disinfectant and rain. Sarah refused to talk about her mother, focusing all her energy on Emily's recovery. I told her Detective Johnson wanted me at the station for a follow-up interview. She nodded without looking up. "Go," she said. "I will stay with her." Her voice had that brittle calm of someone holding herself together with sheer will. The police station in Boulder was nothing like the movies. No buzzing drama, just fluorescent lights that made every face look tired. Johnson led me into a narrow room where a recorder blinked red on the table. He opened a file and slid a printed document toward me. "We pulled this from your mother-in-law's tablet," he said. "She kept a log. She called it a natural immunity journal. You might want to read it." The entries ran for months. Clinical, detached, horrifyingly methodical. April 12th. Mild rash around the mouth. Good. Continue increasing exposure. May. Subject tolerates trace oils on skin. Adjust ratio. I read line after line, my stomach twisting tighter. Every note referred to the child or subject, but I knew exactly who it was. Emily, my daughter reduced to data points in an experiment Margaret had convinced herself was love. Johnson watched me in silence. "Did you have any idea this was happening?" he asked. I shook my head. "She visited often," I said, my throat dry. We tried to trust her. "I believe you," he said quietly. "But you should see this." He clicked on a video file. The image flickered to life our backyard 2 months before the party. Margaret sat on the patio, handing Emily a cookie. "Just a taste," her voice said. Behind the camera, James laughed softly as if filming a family moment. Emily hesitated, then took a bite. The frame cut off when Sarah's voice called from inside. The clip ended there. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Johnson paused the video. "That recording was on James's phone," he said. He turned it over voluntarily. "He says he thought it was harmless." "You believe that I rubbed my forehead?" I was unsure. James had always been the peacekeeper, too kind for confrontation. Maybe his kindness had made him blind. Then Johnson opened another folder, printed emails, all from Margaret's account addressed to a group called Nature Heals Circle. My eyes caught phrases like "reject pharmaceutical lies" and "children build immunity through resistance." Johnson said, "They have been on our radar. Some of their members caused injuries to minors. She is one of their key contributors." The room tilted slightly. "So this was not just her," I whispered. "It is an ideology." "A dangerous one," he said, "and she truly believed she was helping." When I got home, Sarah was at the kitchen table, her laptop open. She did not look up. "Johnson sent me something," she said. I walked closer and saw the email on her screen. It was from Margaret to an old friend. "If Sarah refuses to listen, I will show her the truth myself. She will understand once I prove I was right." Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled. She planned it, Michael. She planned to use our child to make her point. I told her about the video, the journal, the group. She pressed her palms to her face and whispered, "Then there is nothing left to save." I did not know if she meant her mother or the family as a whole. That night, the lights from passing cars slid across the window like brief ghosts. I sat there thinking about all the ways people can destroy one another while believing they are saving them. There was no word big enough for that kind of madness, no forgiveness strong enough to survive it. I looked at Sarah asleep beside Emily's bed and said softly to the dark, "There is no cure for trust once it is gone." The courthouse smelled of paper and cold air. Greenville County was not far, but the drive felt endless. I sat beside Sarah on the hard wooden bench. Her hand was in mine, cold but steady. James sat behind us, thinner than I had ever seen him. Margaret was led in wearing a gray cardigan, her hair pulled tight, her eyes sharp and defiant. When the proceedings began, the prosecutor stood and laid out the evidence. Margaret's journal, the emails, the laboratory report confirming almond oil in the cream. He spoke with a precision that left no room for sentiment. The defendant knowingly exposed a child to a substance she was medically warned could cause harm, he said. This was not negligence. It was intent disguised as care. Margaret's lawyer objected, arguing emotional instability, but Margaret herself interrupted. "I am trying to help my granddaughter," she said, her voice clear. "Modern medicine poisons children. I wanted her strong." The judge asked her to remain silent. Then the video played the footage from our backyard. James's voice was audible in the background, faint but undeniable. The prosecutor turned toward him. "You filmed this." James nodded, tears streaking down his face. I did not know she would keep pushing. I thought he trailed off. Margaret glanced back at him, disgusted, curling her mouth. "Coward," she muttered. Next, Margaret's defense tried to present an email showing Sarah's supposed consent for gentle, natural exposure. For a moment, my heart stopped until Johnson stepped forward and handed over a forensics report. The email was fake, created from Margaret's home IP address. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Sarah covered her mouth, shaking her head. Margaret's mask cracked for the first time. She looked down at her hands, silent. Dr. Williams, the pediatric specialist, took the stand. "This is not an isolated incident," he testified. 3 months before we treated another child for similar burns. The woman who brought her in identified herself as Margaret Harper. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. James stared at his lap, whispering something like a prayer. Finally, the prosecutor introduced the envelope I had found labeled for Sarah when she is ready to forgive. The judge opened it, unfolded the letter, and began to read aloud. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. "If anyone must take responsibility, let it be me. I only wanted to prove that a mother's instincts are never wrong." The room went still. For once, Margaret said nothing. Her head bowed, her hands clenched together as if even she could no longer believe her own words. When it was my turn to testify, I told the court what I had seen, what I had smelled, the almonds, the panic, the way my daughter screamed for light that was not there. My voice broke halfway through. Sarah wept quietly beside me. I turned toward Margaret. "You said pain makes you strong." I told her Emily is strong now, but not because of you. Because her mother ran fast enough to save her. Margaret's eyes glistened, but she did not respond. By the time the judge adjourned, everyone looked drained, like the air itself had been emptied of oxygen. He announced that sentencing would be delayed pending review of the psychiatric evaluation and the evidence of prior harm. It was not victory, it was limbo. Outside the courthouse, James waited under the stone steps. His voice was hoarse. "I am filing for divorce tomorrow," he said. "I cannot save someone who does not want to be saved." His words sounded less like anger and more like mourning. Sarah and I walked toward the parking lot in silence. The sky was pale, washed clean by last night's rain. I reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. For the first time in weeks, that felt like enough. As we drove away, the courthouse shrank in the rearview mirror, but the weight of it stayed with me. It was not just a legal battle anymore. It was a reckoning with the idea that love could justify harm. Some truths did not end with a gavel. Some lingered quietly, reshaping the people who survived them. That night, when I tucked Emily into bed, she asked if Grandma was still mad. I brushed her hair back and said, "No, sweetheart, Grandma is just lost." She nodded, her eyes half closed. "Then maybe someone should find her." I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Maybe, but not us." And as the house finally fell silent, I realized what this fight had truly been about. Not justice, not punishment, but breaking the cycle. The kind of love that hurts in the name of healing had ruled too many lives. It ended here. The morning of the sentencing felt like the world had stopped to hold its breath. The sky hung low over Greenville, heavy with rain. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance as Sarah and I walked up the courthouse steps beside James. None of us spoke. We had said everything there was to say in the quiet hours before dawn. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, the hum of the overhead lights cutting through the silence. Margaret sat at the defense table, pale and rigid, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The confidence that once radiated from her had faded into something brittle, almost hollow. When the judge entered the room, we fell completely still. The prosecutor began by reviewing the evidence, the journals, the emails, the videos, the analysis of the cream, and the letters exchanged with the Nature Heals Circle. Each piece of paper landed like a small hammer nailing down a truth we had all been trying to deny. Margaret's attorney stood next, asking for leniency on the grounds of psychological instability, calling her a mother trapped by her own trauma. But the prosecutor's rebuttal was sharp, unflinching. "This is not madness," he said. "It is pride masquerading as love." Then Sarah was called to the stand. She walked up slowly, her posture straight, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled. "I have forgiven my mother more times than I can count," she said. "But forgiveness is not a shield for harm. I just want my daughter alive, that is all." Her words echoed through the courtroom. Margaret looked at her eyes, glassy lips tight. When it was my turn, I took the stand and felt the weight of every eye in the room. I told them about the birthday party, about the scream that tore through the air, about the way the world tilted in that moment. "I believed family meant safety," I said. "But now I know it can also be the place where danger hides behind love." My voice cracked on the last word. Margaret did not look away. Just as the prosecutor began his closing statement, Margaret suddenly stood. Her voice sliced through the room. "I did not do anything wrong," she said. "If Emily were not so weak, this would not have happened." Gasps broke out. The judge struck his gavel, calling for order, but she went on her words trembling. "You do not understand. I lost a child once. She died from those poisonous drugs the doctors gave her. I could not let that happen again." The room fell silent. The truth hit like lightning through the storm. James's face crumpled. Sarah's sob tore the air apart. Margaret's voice faltered, then became small for the first time. "I was just trying to stop history from repeating." James rose from his seat. "It did repeat," he said, his voice breaking. "Because you let your fear become your weapon." His confession filled the space between us like a verdict of its own. The judge's tone softened, but his words were clear. "Fear cannot excuse what was done. We all suffer loss, but no one has the right to cause another." He paused, then read the sentence: 4 years in state prison for reckless endangerment of a minor and full restitution of Emily's medical care. Margaret closed her eyes, her shoulders sinking. As the deputies moved to escort her out, she turned once more toward me. "I only wanted her strong," she whispered. I met her gaze and said quietly, "She will be just not your way." Rain drummed against the courthouse windows as we walked out. Sarah gripped my hand, her fingers cold but firm. James stood at the base of the steps without an umbrella, letting the rain soak through his coat. I looked at him, unsure if there was anything left to say. He just nodded, eyes red and distant. The storm thickened gray sheets falling across the city. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me, a strange lightness buried under the ache. Justice had come late, but sure, like the storm breaking after too many dry days. As we walked away, I whispered to myself, "It is over now." Or maybe it has finally begun. After the incident in Boulder and previous cases in Greenville, we decided to move to Madison to start fresh. 5 months later, the rain had given way to spring. Our new house in Madison sat near a lake where the water shimmered under the morning sun. No alarms, no cameras, no echoes of the courtroom, just wind moving through the grass and the soft sound of Emily's laughter as she painted on the porch. Her eyesight had almost completely healed. She wore glasses, now thick and pink, and said they made her look like a scientist. Sarah smiled every time she said that. I had gone back to work designing games again while Sarah returned to her nursing shifts. Life moved slower here. James visited every few weeks, always with a small bouquet or a jar of homemade jam. He no longer wore his wedding ring, but he carried an old photo in his wallet, 2 little girls in matching dresses, one of them, Sarah, the other the daughter Margaret had lost so many years ago. He never spoke of the divorce, but grief lingered around him like a quiet shadow. Sarah and I began couples therapy not because we were broken, but because we did not want to be. In one session, I said, "No one is immune to fear, but we get to choose whether we let it steer our lives." Sarah nodded, tears shining in her eyes, and said, "I am done letting it drive mine." For the first time, I believed her. One afternoon, while cleaning, Emily pulled open a drawer and found the sealed envelope I had hidden months before, the one addressed to Sarah. She ran to us, waving it like treasure. "Mom, Dad, look what I found." We sat together on the porch and opened it. Inside was a short letter written in Margaret's careful script. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I did not know how to love any other way. Please teach Emily what I never learned." Sarah read it twice before folding it back up. "I cannot forgive her," she said quietly, "but I cannot stop hating her." That evening, Emily showed us a new drawing. The sky was gray with a single bright streak cutting through the clouds. Beneath it, she had written, "This is me. I can see now." I looked at the picture and felt something unclench inside me. Healing did not announce itself. It arrived softly in moments like that. When Emily's next birthday came, we kept it simple. No balloons, no big crowd, just the 3 of us and James. The cake was small vanilla with sugar icing. Safe, plain, perfect. Emily closed her eyes to make a wish. And before blowing out the candles, Sarah leaned close and said, "Remember, sweetheart, being strong does not mean you are never scared. It means you are scared and love anyway." Emily grinned, then sent the flames flickering out. I closed my eyes, too, just for a moment, and let the sound of their laughter fill the room. The world had cracked open once, but somehow we had found light inside the break. Later that night, after Emily was asleep, I stood by the window watching moonlight ripple across the lake. "I used to think justice was a verdict," I whispered. "But it is not. It is when the truth no longer has to hide." I thought about Margaret, then not with anger, not even pity, just understanding. She had started the storm, but we had learned how to live after it. Behind me, Sarah's voice floated from the hallway. "Michael, come to bed." I turned off the light and looked once more at the moon's reflection before answering coming. As the house fell quiet, I realized something simple and certain. Love is not the absence of fear. It is what remains after the fear has passed. And in that peace, the light finally came back to stay. Sometimes the hardest storms are not the ones that flood our streets. They are the ones that drown our hearts. This story is not just about a courtroom or a verdict. It is about fear, love, and the dangerous line between them. It is about how people can lose themselves in the name of care, and how healing begins the moment we stop calling harm by softer names. I have learned that forgiveness does not always mean letting someone back in. Sometimes it just means letting yourself breathe again. And strength, it is not born from pain. It is born from surviving it and still choosing to love. If this story touched something in you, please take a moment to share your thoughts below. Maybe you faced your own kind of storm, one that changed the way you see love, family, or trust. Tell me where you are listening from, or simply say, I am here. Knowing you are there means more than you can imagine. And if you want to walk through more stories like this about resilience, redemption, and finding light after the dark, please subscribe to the channel. Every voice, every comment, every listener helps remind someone out there that even when everything seems broken, there is still a way back to peace. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that light always returns.